We're gonna go to dry fly school today. I don't really have an exact format for the class, but you're essentially gonna follow me upstream and I'm gonna give you lots of tips and tricks on how to fish dry flies. I wish I could tell you I was a dry fly or die type of guy. I'm not. I'll nymph, I'll throw streamers. There's a lot of great experiences you can have under the surface, but if I'm on a river and I think the dry fly fishing is possible, that's where I'm starting. That's plan A every time. So I'm just gonna stop a number of times going up the river and share with you how and why I'm gonna fish different sections of water. So starting right here, there's a big pool right here in front of me with a very steep bank. So number one, this water's very clear. I'm gonna strike from way back. And this is where it's really helpful to have a nice strong cast so that I can stay back off of these fish. The seam is quite a ways out. This water right in front of me is really dead still. So when my fly gets into that dead still water, I'm gonna agitate it like that and skitter my fly. Kick a roll cast out to get it aerialized again. Nice long shot there. And here I'm actually mending downstream. Before we jump too much just into the fishing, I wanna make sure this is a class, okay? Mending and the principle of a drag-free drift. Let me explain those things because you're going to hear the term mend. And maybe you're currently a mender and you're mending and you're dry fly fishing, but let me explain a couple things about just the drift in general. Dry fly fishing is really going to be a drag-free drift. So that's going to be me taking my fly, throwing it out in the river, and then that fly drifting helplessly downstream. Bugs will wiggle and skitter and do things like that, but what they don't typically do is make a big V-wake on the water. And that's really what we're trying to avoid, is this sustained tension on the line. Any public trout stream where trout are eating bugs that make a V-wake, they learn really quickly that those bugs bite back. So imagine you're a trout, a fly's making a V-wake on the surface, you go up, you eat it, there's a hook in it, you get caught. You learn really quickly to avoid those. When we mend, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to fix or repair the cast. Okay, so mending, the root of the term, we're fixing or repairing. I'm gonna back off and I'm gonna show you different types of mending. But what I want you to understand about mending is any manipulation of the line to promote a natural presentation. You could mend upstream, you could mend downstream, you can have mends that are neutral just to break tension. Mending could be line feeding or feeding line. There's lots of different types of mends. So any adjustment that we do or manipulation we do with the line is essentially a mend. Now, after over 20 years of guiding lots of anglers, teaching lots of anglers, one thing that I want you to understand about the mend is when you see me demonstrate this little mending exercise that I'd like you to do when you're on your trout river, is the rod tip has to have some flexibility. So when we mend, we're actually going to be going through these subtle accelerations with the rod, and we're using the flexibility of the rod. And it just seems to me dry fly rods that are a little bit finer seem to load up a little bit easier, so you can make those manipulations hopefully without making too much of a V-wake or too much movement with your fly. So with that said, we're going to back off and I'm going to show you the exercise that I want you to do to become a really good mender and be able to. So when it comes to mending, one thing I want you to do if you really want to get good at this and become a very competent dry fly angler is I'm going to go ahead and throw a cast. I don't care how the cast gets there, it gets there. And my fly's out there on the water and I'm going to try to flip my line left and right and left and right and left and right with minimal movement while my fly is drifting. So let's go ahead and do that again. I make a cast, and this is a hard one to do because I've only got about 15 feet of line, but I could make that line jump around with minimal movement on the fly because I've learned to just flick my wrist the tiniest bit, and we'll do that again. And that's making that rod tip load up, and you can see my line hopping in the air. Too many people mend with a rod like it's a dead stick. And we have these fine flexible rods and these great fly lines. The fly lines, when they're clean and new, just want to jump out of the water. The other thing I want you to note about my mending style is, see how high my rod tip is? I watch people all the time try to move the rod laterally without actually picking the line up in the air. And I want you to remember this one thing about mending. Line moves far easier through the air than the water. You can have far more delicacy and touch when you elevate the rod tip. So your mending exercise is, we've thrown a short cast. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm going to take that rod up at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to learn to kick that line around and move that line around while leaving that fly stuck to the water. The fly will move a little bit, but there's a big difference between rings that are round coming off of an insect, like a ripple, and a V-wake. We'll talk a little bit more about the ripple effect in just a moment and how we can fool trout in some big open pools. And I'm going to skitter the bug a little bit on my mends. I'm going to try to disguise my mends with a little bit of movement where the fly might hop and scoot and skitter a little bit. So roll cast into the air, one false cast, go ahead and lay it down, and I'm going to give it a little right reach. That's a little downstream mend built into it. Now things are starting to move a little bit better here, but I'm still going to have to mend downstream a little bit. And when I mend, the mend is kind of like the cast because I need to load the rod. The rod is not just a dead stick. My mends, I need to get my tip up and accelerate a little bit. So to recover my cast, right here I'm going to roll into the air. So roll cast recovery, false cast or two, and I'm going to stay kind of low because the water's very, very clear. Shoot a nice one way up the seam. Skitter a little bit. The drift's getting a little bit messy, so I'm going to skitter it. And basically I just skittered it out of the seam. I didn't like the presentation right there. Really stiff wind there. But I'm staying back on the gravel bar, skittering it, skittering it, skittering it. Handling my line. Line handling is really important so I don't step on it. In fact, I'll just break for a second. I think one of the biggest impediments to angler successes in that beginner to intermediate type of level is just being able to move quickly enough around the river. You can have a really, really good cast, but if you can't cast and walk, it's very difficult to cover enough water to be successful. So especially on these big western rivers like this. So roll cast into the air, couple of false casts, dump it again. And I'm staying just this side of the riptide right here. So skitter, 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 lines in my hand. That one I'll just pick up, didn't need to roll cast it. Fire it up again. A little right reach right there, right reach, and there's a trout, got him. Okay, nice little cutthroat. Took right after the skitter. I just think that's such an important piece of it. And I'm just gonna sit down. This is a really steep bank. I'd make a good blooper reel if I tried to walk down this ledge. All this gravel would give way. But I think, you know, being able to disguise bad drifts with skittering motions, and I'll show you the fly I'm using as well. Nice little trout. Oh, this looks like a cutbow of some sort. I don't know, I've never fished this river before. There we go, ate this big stonefly. Get that little fella released. And the fly I'm using is an Emma's golden stonefly. There will be a link in the video description to that, but one reason I really like that fly is because it has so much good quality hackle, so it really perches up on top and I can skitter it. But that little lesson is going to be understanding when your drifts are going bad, don't just let them go bad. You know, promote a little action, learn to skitter it, shake that rod tip. And then one other little tip when it comes to, I call that the kind of the pitch and twitch, you know, when you're doing it intentionally, you pitch it, you twitch it, is putting floatant on your leader and your line so that your line stays really high on the surface and actually brings the fly up and skitters it a little bit. So we'll just call that lesson one, and we'll talk you through the next one, and hopefully the fish grow. So I worked up the inside part of this hole. So I worked everything on the near half of the fast strip. So I worked up, and I kind of took slices like a clock. So I would go, say 11, 12, 1, step, 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 11, 12, 1, step, 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 11, 12, 1. Eventually I got all the way up to where my son is now at the top, but we left everything on the far side alone. It's very tempting, and let's just go ahead and take a look here. It's very tempting to try to cast as you're going over into those little eddies on the far side of that fast water. There's a lot of fish on those hard banks or those high banks. So this would be the low bank. I'm on the gravel bar here. It's the inside bend. It's real easy walking and wading. And then the high bank or the hard bank is this one over there where there's a lot of swift current. And that's often where your trees and structure are. Very fishy. They've got good shade. They've got good food source for terrestrials like we're fishing now. Instead of working across or trying to cast up, which results in a horrifically bad drift, what we like to do is we work up this way and then we cycle through and then we work down going back. So we essentially fish a circle. So now what I'm gonna do, it's almost like I'm in a drift boat. I'm gonna angle downstream and I'm gonna put a big reach cast into it. So I'm gonna cast here, one false cast. I'm gonna stop with my rod tip really high and left. And I've got a really strong upstream mend in that as I go. And it's not gonna be the prettiest drift a lot of the time. This is a very hard cast. Go ahead and take a look where I'm casting there. It's way more distance than I would like, but I wanna give you the example. So I'm trying to work those far seams, and I'll skitter it right out into the main current line now. Since I've already fished everything on this weak side, it's okay. So let's go ahead and we're gonna keep moving back. Okay, big left reach with a high stop. That high stop gives me enough slack to make that drift work. That's a very hard drift, but oh, it's tracking pretty good. Giving a little twitchy. Instead of just a mend or line feeding, I can walk a little bit. That's called walking the dog. If I'm on an easy bar like this, I can just walk the dog. All right, dropped it in again. Little downstream mend there. Little downstream mend, all right. And I'm really doing a pitch and twitch. Let's go ahead and take a look out. We'll get right here on this point. And I'll get down here. You can stay up there. My lovely wife is my camera person today. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a pitch and twitch. I'm gonna throw it back in the slack water on the other side. And that's too far for me to put any type of reach English on it. So I can twitch it back in. But the slack line is a result of my rod tip dropping. So when you fish back down the hard banks, I'm gonna overshoot it, I'm gonna skate it back, and now my rod tip dropping is essentially making all that free drift right there. And I can try feeding line a little bit right there, but I think it's really important to just have a nice, tight, straight line cast. We're gonna fire it over there. I'm gonna skate it back to the seam and let it run down that outside. That's a very, very hard seam to fish. My son had hit it once already. I thought maybe he left one behind, but I think he cleaned him up there. Let's go ahead and charge upstream and we'll find the next lesson. So we've come up on a pool here, and one of the #1 ways that I like to fool trout on a dry fly is I actually like to let the fish see the fly hit. A lot of good food isn't just going to drift along for 2 miles and eventually wind up in this pool. So if the fish sees it drifting in just out on the horizon, kind of just like from this kind of this infinite part of their view shed, a lot of times that's not as fishy as the bug actually falling into the water, because bugs, when they fall into the water, they like to crawl out to the shore, or they get eaten, or minnows eat them, or they sink eventually. So if I can show the fish the origin of its food, that's good. There's a certain casting style that you can adapt, and it's gonna have a real hard stop to the rod. And it's gonna be a nice, high, hard stop. And what we can do is we can deliver that fly so that the fly lands independently and the line lands later, okay? And we really have to have a lot of line speed. I would suggest practicing your casting a lot just to develop a short, quick casting stroke. And I'm gonna develop a lot of line speed here. I'm actually even gonna give a little haul, and I'm gonna stop high and hard right there. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna turn my fly over very aggressively, and my fly is gonna hit the water, creating these nice round rings and really making it look as though that bug, maybe it's a stonefly or a grasshopper or a terrestrial, even a caddis or a mayfly. I see this to have just a great effect on the trout's willingness to bite. So I'm gonna step up a little bit further into the pool, and wham, I'm gonna drop that fly in. My line is gonna feather down just a moment after. And there's a lot I can eventually do with that in more advanced fishing. I'll throw a couple here. I can actually hit the fly down and kick my line left if that's necessary. I can smack my fly down and hit the line to the right, so that I can begin to throw a little reach cast, like so, left again and right again, like that right there. And so I can actually manipulate my line. So let's take another shot up here. And what I want to do on this one is I want my fly to hit the water first, and I want my line to kick down slightly left, like that right there, so that I've kept my line what I feel is out of the fish's plane of view, and I've hit that fly down, made a nice ring. It's like a dinner bell. Trout will respond very well to that impact when those little round ripples come off of that. Very different than a dragging fly.
Go for it.
I didn't even get the camera on because Junior couldn't wait to make his cast. We were just talking about how you were going to get what you were going to do.
Nice one.
That is a nice one. Nice cutthroat.
Oh, look at all those fish jumping in the background there. they're going crazy for whatever little hatch is going on right now.
Okay, so you're pitch and twitch, man. So
Pitch it in there, kind of twitch it, give it some action, especially in this rain. I think that helps us. They can see a little bit better.
well, the problem is we got those boily currents over there. I'll net them for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's the really boily currents on the other side, and so you can't just do a traditional mend. Beautiful, got him. Nice cut. Beautiful cutthroat.
That's a slab right there.
Yeah, it is. Go ahead and unhook him. And then we'll... All right, there he is. Nice fish. Well done. Way to go, man.
Thank you.
Nice. Oh, you're already back to fishing while I take care of this trout.
Yep.
So we've walked up into the situation here and we found some feeding fish about right there where the rod's pointed, right on the shoreline. The problem with drifting it into them is you got this branch, there's a set of branches right there. And so the cast that's going to be required is going to be a left reach cast. And so that's what I'm going to try to put on them right now, is a left reach. And I switched to a small mayfly. And I don't really have an angle from up above down. So I'm going to have to measure carefully. And I'm going to drop my first one about 2 to 3 feet short. Okay, so I'm going to take a step to the left. And the reason I dropped it short, I'm fishing a small fly. I'm not going to spook anything, but I kind of want to figure out what the currents are doing. Okay. Okay, so I'm probably another foot short right there. Oh, got him. No, I tried. That's a decent cutthroat. Oh man, lost him. That's a really little fly. I'm snagged around my wife's neck. She looks pretty stoked about that. Okay. Okay, let's try to pick the other one off. So that one swam out for me. Okay, that's a little short, but when I'm finishing this cast, it's a very high stop. Let me explain this before. I'm excited to try to hook that other fish, but if I finish with my rod low, it's instantaneous drag, okay? I have to finish with my rod high so that there's enough slack that the fly can drift immediately. Okay, so let's try to get this other fish here. Measure once. Okay. A little short of him. This one's right on that should get him. Got him. Oh, stuck him for just a second. Well, it'd have been more fun to land him, but there's your tip. There's going to be a lot of situations you really need to work on that big left reach, big high stop. My elbow comes up at the end of the cast. My rod tip finishes left, and I'm putting a big left reach. One thing I want to emphasize, this is not a compound motion, you know, where I'm casting and then making a jab to the left. It's very smooth. You want to practice that in the lawn, practice that at home before you hit the river so that you've got that tool in your tool bag to get those, hopefully peel those fish out and make those tough casts. So ideally we work upstream, but we're on this huge river and we're walking all these braids. So there's times when I'm going to have to present from above the trout. And we're trucking down this lane right now because there's just no way to do that. We kind of hit a spot where we couldn't really hike further up anymore. So we're going to go down this braided channel. And when you're working downstream, what we want to do is we want to do what's called a stop or a parachute cast. And I'm going to stop with my rod really high. And what that does, that makes a whole bunch of slack line. Now go ahead and let's take a look at the fly here. And that fly is just drifting down into the pool. Now I'm going to take my rod tip and I'm going to turn it in and I'm going to skate my fly out of the pool. Okay, and I'm stripping in line a little bit so that my fly is not being picked up to cast when it's over the fish. So again, I'm gonna do a big stop cast, and I'm a long ways from the fish. I'm staying back here on the bar. I've got a huge back cast here. So I'm drifting, and now I'm gonna take and I'm gonna turn my fly in. I don't wanna just rip my fly out of the middle of the pool. So I'm gonna skate my fly off to the side, and now I'm gonna take aim at some sticks over there. Same thing, big stop, reach. That puts a good mend into it. And I'm gonna drift by that stick. And now I've got a mend right here. So instead of mend, I'm just gonna kind of skitter a little bit. And now I'm gonna walk the dog. I'm actually gonna walk with that drift. And then I can add a little bit of line feeding. I don't wanna get crazy, because the more line I have, the harder my hook set is. So let my fly swing in so it's out of the pool. And again, big stop reach, big right reach, that's my mend. And ideally, I don't have to mend at all. I can let my fly hit. Those fish will see that fly hit. I'm gonna skitter it up, and I'm just gonna walk the dog all the way down. Let my fly skate out of the pool like that right there, so that I don't disturb, where'd you go? So that I don't disturb the fish. I wanna make sure my fly gets out to the ledge where I'm much less likely to scare a fish. So the next spot we're gonna hit, my son's gonna fish this one, but we've got this isolated slot on one side of the river. This is all plain Jane gravel, no structure. And then we've got this deep green slot right in here. And then anytime you get a high hard bank, especially a shade line like that against the sticks, you're probably gonna find trout. All right, we got into a little one here. So one thing we didn't get on video, but we've got this little guy, and I'll sweep in there and get him. Just a small trout, but a good trout nonetheless. We're using this just a little Royal PMX, real small fly. Switching to a smaller fly has yielded better results for us today. One thing that's difficult when you get these bars that are going like this is you get these rip tides. Like, it's super fast right there and super slow right there and super fast right here. It's tempting to cast across a lot of the really fast ones, but you gotta be patient, and you gotta just sneak up a little bit shorter and make shorter casts so that you're not stretching your line across those fast spots. So we're gonna keep stepping. And now we're gonna get a much better shot at the dark area here. Jacob insists on casting 50 feet for everything. I wish he'd cast a little bit shorter right now. Oh, you missed him, dude.
Right if I casted shorter.
Oh man, fish broke off.
Oh, it did? Oh.
That was a good one. Yeah, fish broke the line on the set. Yeah, maybe casting 50 feet works. I don't know. That was unfortunate. All of these whirlpools and all of these undertows are constantly just sucking my line down. And so if I just let my leader stay slack with a bunch of curls in it, the undertows are just gonna suck my leader under, and therefore my fly is gonna get pulled under. So it takes just a little experience, but you really, like right now, I'm working on keeping my leader on the surface. It's a lot of why I'm physically moving that caddis. There's a fish, there we go, there's a decent fish. But yeah, I'm physically having to lift that fly up and keep that line up on the surface. Otherwise, it's just gonna drown in a big mess, in a big whirlpool. And here, I can video while you get the net. Oh, he came off. Oh, that was a nice one too.
Poor netting job.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a poor netting job. That was just, we're standing kind of right on the edge of the bar, and it's more concerned with making a video than landing the fish, I guess. But yeah, that twitching and the skittering in all of these mixed currents There's whirlpools and boils all through here, and it'll just suck your leader right down unless you get really good at twitching that leader back up to the surface. If the leader's on the surface, your fly can stay on the surface, but as soon as the leader gets sucked down, you're gonna have a really tough time getting your fly to float through there. Well, I hope that some of the tips and lessons that I shared with you today are helpful. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to unpack. There's a ton left unsaid, but hopefully a few of those ideas that I was employing are gonna be helpful. But right now I'm on a family vacation, and it's driving my wife and my son insane trying to put up a YouTube video of our fishing trip, and all they want to do is go dry fly fishing. So I got to wrap it up, and we're just going to go catch some fish. We're having to cover a lot of ground today, so we're spread out. My wife is like a half mile up that gravel bar, and then, oh great, now it's pouring down rain. Oh my God, she's gonna kill me. Okay, we're wrapping up the video and heading for the car, but hopefully the dry fly tips today were helpful for you.